Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. Well, the book I'm looking at right now is an exploration of life in a large family. It's titled The Hein Family. It's written by Alexandra Hein, and she's right here with me now, and we get to talk all about it. Alexandra, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Hi.
So can you tell me all about The Hein Family, Alexandra? What are readers going to find?
They are going to find a busy, full house with kids and just a daily task, kind of what it takes just during the day and basically on my husband's day off. It makes the days go by a little bit smoother, but just a casual day where we're doing our chores, eating breakfast, and going out and hanging out at one of our favorite parks and coming back home and having dinner and just serving the Lord all the way through with prayer and trusting Him and things like that.
And how large of a family are we talking about here?
So when I wrote that story, we were a family of 8, and then now we just got blessed with our newborn, who's 4 months now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're a family of 9 now.
Wow. So when you were writing this, what sorts of readers did you have in mind?
I was thinking it could be down to any child who will listen, from age 3 to 5 maybe, or any child that is ready to read, actually, and could read it. So probably 10-year-olds too as well and down.
So what was the inspiration behind this book? How did it come about?
Just our daily living. It was just seeing us every day, and I read stories to them all the time. And I was like, the story just kept playing in my mind about my son just being the author. And I was like, I'm going to just sit down and see what kind of comes out. It just kept playing in my thoughts. And I was like, it'd be a fun book to write.
Are you experienced in this kind of thing, or are you new to it?
Yes, this is all very new to me. Very, very new. I wasn't sure how to go about even starting or where to look or anything. But when I looked online and I saw Christian Faith Publishing, I was like, I love that it's Christian based, and I hope that it reaches other families that are big or anyone who's curious or anything like that. So,
Once you got started on this, how long of a process was it for you?
I'd say it came quite quickly, honestly. It was probably maybe a month at the most. The story kept playing in my thoughts, and I was like, I think it's there. And it was just so enjoyable to just sit and do and think of rhyming. And it's like the story's right before me playing every day. So it was like, okay, it's there.
And something that's super important about books like this is the illustrations. So was that a tricky process for you to get those illustrations right that you wanted?
I'd say before I even was able to come up with the idea fully, I sat with a pen and paper and kind of drew stick figured people and sat and drew a table. It's not nearly as pretty as the person who drew, but yeah, the idea came to mind quite easy as well.
So once you did start that publishing process, overall, what did you find the most challenging about that?
The most challenging thing, I think, was to just, am I going to do this or not kind of thing. And then me and my husband were just praying about it, and we had put some savings aside, and we were just praying, and we were just like, we'll never know, and then I really enjoy writing, and I just hope that anyone else who reads it enjoys it as well.
So you put a lot of time and a lot of work into this, and then that day came and you got your finished product finally. You were holding this in your hands for the first time. What was that like, Alexandra?
Pretty exciting. I think I told everyone. And then I passed one out to every family house. They were all waiting too, and they were like, oh, and they were going through the process with me with the pictures, with the writing. They loved the story, and so I was pretty ecstatic to see it.
Well, what a fascinating book. I think a lot of readers are going to be really into this. Again, the book is titled The Hein Family. It's written by Alexandra Hein and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So find it places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Alexandra, it's been so wonderful talking with you tonight and learning about the Hein family. Thanks again for chatting with me.
Thank you. Have a blessed day.
I'm looking at a book right now. It's a captivating and insightful memoir. It's written by Teresa Stroud, and it's titled Through the Eyes of a Travel Nurse. And I get to find out all about this book. Teresa is sitting right here with me. Teresa, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining me here tonight.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm curious about Through the Eyes of a Travel Nurse, Teresa. Can you tell me what readers are going to find when they open this up?
Yes. I've been a nurse for 39 years. And about 25 of those years, I've worked as a travel nurse. Some people may not know what a travel nurse is, some may. But a travel nurse is a nurse that usually works for an agency, and they send travel nurses, they send nurses all over the country, or you may stay very close to home. Me, I have been all over the United States. I've driven all across the country, all by myself, and up and down the East and West Coast. I've seen the United States like a lot of people might not be able to see it. And I have gained an education in my travels and working at all these different facilities like you wouldn't get if you were sitting in a classroom. When you go to work at a hospital, you have to go through orientation and you have to learn what that hospital requires of you. And no two hospitals are the same. And once you leave that hospital and you go to your next assignment, then you have pretty much, you've got to forget what you learned before so that you can learn the new things that the new hospital expects of you. So that's how I've operated primarily for 25 years out of those 39. It's been very exciting. There's a lot of excitement when it comes to that. You see a lot of things all over the country you don't see otherwise. I got to see a lot of the United States I wouldn't have seen otherwise. One of my favorite places is Long Island, New York. When you tell people you talk about going to New York, they immediately think about New York City. Well, New York City sits in Manhattan, and that's one place I refuse to drive. I've driven in L.A., San Francisco, all up and down the west coast of California, went across the Golden Gate Bridge, and I got to go across the Golden Gate Bridge for free. But when I came back across, they charged me $5 to get back across. Long Island is different. I would recommend any travel nurse, or any nurse for that matter, if you had a chance to go to Long Island, go to Long Island, because Long Island is full of farms and vineyards. It's a quaint place in some regards, but it's a wonderful place, and people there treat you very nicely. Another one of my favorite places was the last contract I did last year. I went to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I worked at CHA Cambridge Hospital. It's a Harvard hospital. And I was very, very glad that I got to go and do that assignment because I had worked at Duke and Johns Hopkins and Yale in the past, but I always wanted to go to a Harvard hospital. So I got to do that. Everybody up there treated me so well. I got to go deep sea fishing off of Cape Cod. I'd always wanted to do that, but I never had the opportunity. And so that's just a little bit of what you might be able to do when you go to travel.
Now, Teresa, when you were writing this, what sorts of readers did you have in mind?
I was hoping that anybody that was interested in nursing would read it, especially nursing students, because nursing today is not like it used to be when I began. When I graduated nursing school in 1985, I had to go sit in a coliseum for 2 days to take state boards to get my license. Today, they sit at a computer, they go through and they answer X number of questions, and when they get to a certain number of questions, then the machine cuts off, and it's not but a few days until they find out whether they passed or failed. I took my state boards in May. I didn't find out if I passed or failed until August. And when the letter came in the mail, I was so afraid I did not pass. And we only lived about a block from my church. So I walked to church and let my pastor open the letter and let him be the one to tell me whether I passed or failed. And lo and behold, I passed.
Well, this is a book I think a lot of readers are really going to love. Again, the title is Through the Eyes of a Travel Nurse. This is written by Teresa Stroud and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it anywhere, really, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also right down the street at your local bookshop. Well, Teresa, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks again for chatting.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Author Peter Llewellyn has written an original take on World War II history. It's titled The Heisman Chronicles, an alternative history on the last 2 years of the Third Reich. And that's what we're going to be talking all about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, Peter, is right here with me. Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. Peter, I'm interested in learning all about the Heisman Chronicles. Can you tell me about the book?
The book is based from September 1943 till January 1944, and it discusses how Hitler transferred most of his wealth to banks originally in Switzerland. His name at the start, that changed because the person he asked to do this, whose name was Franz Heisman, had grown up around Jewish people, and although he wasn't Jewish himself, he decided that he would work out a methodology for stealing the money. He was a very smart young man. He'd been to Cambridge and got 2 doctorates and also a doctorate from Berlin. And he also spoke several languages. So Hitler asked him, after passing him over for promotion, asked him if he would come up with a plan to remove all of the assets. So he only had a driver that was given to him, and he was promoted from colonel to major general to help him in his quest to remove all of the wealth of the Third Reich. Hitler believed that the Third Reich would lose the war, and he wanted everybody to have the money to continue. So, through the book, it shows how the money was transferred to Swiss banks, and when it was in the Swiss banks, how it was moved because Heisman decided to get a new identity while he was in Switzerland. And it tells you how he did this, how he transferred all the money, and how he continued to get closer to Hitler. And the next book tells how he disposed of all of the gold. So it's really a story going through this side of Hitler. And as the story progresses through the books, it tells you how it all ends up and who Heisman really was.
That's so interesting. Peter, how did you get the idea for this?
Well, I was suffering badly with PTSD, and also, which I had done for years, and also my dog was dying, and I had also caught COVID-19 in the December.
Oh my gosh.
When nobody knew where it was. And I ended up waking up with no taste, no smell, and asthma at the age of 72. And I got so depressed one day, I stuck a gun in my mouth. And had it not been for my dying dog walking in the room, I probably would have injured myself or killed myself. So I decided that I needed an escape. I had no idea at all what I was going to write about. I sat with my laptop on my lap with a notepad by my side, and I started writing about the Nazi regime. As a child, I'd been and seen Cafe News, which showed Hitler being shot in his bunker. And I always wondered why that happened. Why would he need to film it? Was the most important reason to me. So I started writing with that in mind. And after about 5 weeks, I finished my first book. I read it through. There was lots of mistakes because I'm dyslexic. And over a 2-month period, I'd written a second book, and I couldn't get past 3 months. I had so much detail in my books that I reached 100,000 words, and I had all this more writing to do. So I ended up over 18 months writing a 12-book series.
Again, the title is The Heisman Chronicles, an alternative history of the last 2 years of the Third Reich. This is written by Peter Llewellyn and published by Newman Springs Publishing, so you can find it at places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Peter, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me all about this.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Author Lisa Wilson shares her personal story of transformation of faith and purpose in her new book, Worth, Discover Your Worth. This is part of the Discovery series, and we're going to be talking all about it right now. Lisa is here with me. Lisa, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your time, Lisa. I'm interested in Worth, Discover Your Worth. Can you tell me what it's all about?
Sure. The book itself tells the story of how I overcame bullying in my adolescence and narcissistic abuse in my young adulthood, and how I had learned who I was in Christ Jesus by using biblical affirmations to help me see myself as God sees me. Because once I learned the true value of who I was in Him, I was able to get back my self-confidence. I was having way too many times was I allowing other people to decide what my value was. And that happens often when you're in a narcissistic relationship. They just have a way of trying to pull you down. So that's what the book is about, just helping people to understand that God sees us quite differently than we see ourselves most of the time. And if we could just get a grasp on how He sees us, we would stop looking to others to be affirmed, but instead to look to Him. In a nutshell, that kind of gives you an idea, I hope.
Absolutely. Lisa, what sorts of readers did you have in mind when you were writing this?
Well, any and all. Narcissists come in all shapes and sizes. You could be living next door to one. You could be married to one. You could have one in your original family that you're dealing with on probably should be the most important times of your life is your holidays and that, and still you're dealing with someone who just wants to pull you down all the time. And it really can hit young and old. It doesn't matter your age or where you live. They're out there. And because they have such low self-esteem, the only way to build themselves up is to pull you down so that they can feel superior again. And it's just one of those difficult things that if your personality style, which my personality style is an empath, wants to help people be better at what it is they're good at. And so I wanted to help those in my life that were like that. And it just wasn't working because they would just drain me of anything and everything that I was willing to give. And basically, it's like learning how to take care of yourself, because you really have nothing to offer anyone if you can't take care of yourself. And once we learn who God says we are, we're able to see past the negative labels, I guess, that others want to put on us and see ourselves in a totally different light.
So what does your writing background look like, Lisa? Have you done this kind of thing before?
No, this was my first. I mean, when I was a kid, I won a contest, and I was able to go into the school and read books to little kids. So I thought I would write books for children, but when the Lord called me into something that I thought it would be fiction, that when He wanted me to tell my story in order to help people that felt helpless and helplessly trapped in a situation that they knew nothing about how to overcome by empowering yourself, I was as shocked as anyone. I really didn't think that it was even possible for me to write this book. But, where God calls you, He also provides for you.
So is this a long period of time for you, the writing and publishing and everything?
The writing took a year, and it wasn't like I did it every day because we travel a lot. So whenever we weren't here, I was basically probably 7 months I wasn't writing. But it's not like it was in a row or anything. So whenever I was home, then I would write. I just wanted to compartmentalize so that I could spend time with my family because I looked at the writing process as work. When my husband was home, I wanted to be with him. And when we were gone on trips or whatever, I wanted to be where I was at. So it took me a year for that, and then it took another year for the publishing. It does take time. It's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah, that publishing process, there's a lot involved in that. Lisa, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing end of things?
For me, I read fast. And when it came to the editing or even correcting edits, there can be a word that can totally mean something else, but only one letter is changed. And somehow my brain, when I'm reading quickly, would just translate it to what it's supposed to be. And so I would miss it. And I had to teach myself how to really slow down and really pay attention to every letter of every word. That was the hardest part for me.
Again, it's titled Worth, Discover Your Worth. This is part of the Discovery series. It's written by Lisa Wilson and published by Covenant Books, so you can find it everywhere, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Lisa, thanks again for talking with me tonight. It was great chatting.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
The book we're going to talk about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable invites young readers on a captivating adventure through the eyes of a child. The title of the book is Night Pigeons. It's written by Helen Ivey. We're going to talk all about it. Helen is right here with me. Helen, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be talking with you, and I'm curious about Night Pigeons, Helen. Can you tell me what readers are going to find here?
This is actually a book that I wrote about a true, honest conversation that I had with a 4-year-old granddaughter many years ago. She's grown now. But it's just one of those things that you can't ever forget because it meant so much to me. And it was so unusual that she asked me to tell her about night pigeons at the end of our camping trip. And that's why we named it Night Pigeons.
What kinds of readers did you have in mind?
I actually can go two different directions. I actually still teach school, so second and third and fourth graders are really, really liking it. In fact, the teachers at my school are trying to make it for AR reading points. So I know that it appeals to that age bracket. I have read it myself to younger children, but I think it's one of those books that'll go either way. I think it would be fabulous for grandparents to read to a child, but then when they're old enough to read between third and fifth grade, I think they enjoy reading it as well.
Was there anything in particular, Helen, that sparked you to sit down and get started on this?
Well, I just think that the conversation was so unusual. Like I said earlier, it's one of those things that there's times in life where you have experiences, but they're not really prevalent in your mind all the time. But this one was very special. And I just never let it go. You know, it was one of those things that I kept saying over the years, I really need to write that down. I really need to write that down. And then one day I said, okay, I'm just going to do it.
So is this your first time writing and publishing, or have you done this kind of thing before?
I haven't. This was my first time. I was really excited to be published.
Congratulations. That's a huge deal. How long of a journey was this for you?
I don't really know. I don't really know how to say that because I would write on it after she went off to college a little bit, and then I would say, no, that's not what she said, and I would read it to friends, and they'd say, no, you need to say it this way. And I said, no, I'm going to say it the way she said it, to the very best of my remembrance. And I would put it down and I would pick it up. And so then I finished it in 2023. And then I think the publishing took approximately 9 or 10 months, something like that. But it wasn't extremely long.
And talking about that publishing end of things, what did you find the most challenging part about that for you?
It was really easy. They made it easy because they did it in steps. So I really can't say that it was that challenging for me. I was more worried about did I do it correctly because I had it all together when I sent it. But they were super cool, super nice. They would say, I want you to go back. And they did change quite a few of my pronouns or, rearrange things. But they told me that they would not change my manuscript, and they didn't. They were very, very good about that.
So what was it like when you finally had that finished product in your hands? You got your first copy of Night Pigeons in, and you're looking at it. What was that like?
Oh, it was so exciting. But, I had it in my hand for like a week or two, and I wouldn't tell anybody. I wouldn't tell anybody because I didn't think it was fair. I wrote the book about a conversation that I had with her, and I didn't really think it was fair to start sharing it until she got to see it herself. And the strangest thing happened, you won't believe this, but she was at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. And I had been sending her packages for Halloween, for Thanksgiving. She would come home at Christmas, and then we would send her things, in the spring for Easter. It never took more than 8 days to get from here to Scotland. So I got so excited. I said, I'm not going to show anybody or tell anybody about the book until she gets the first copy. So I mailed it, and it ended up in, I think, Japan, if I can go back and pull the thing. It was just, but she didn't even know it was coming. I just told her I'd sent a package. I didn't tell her what it was. This was like the end of March, and it didn't get there, and it didn't get there, and it didn't get there. And I'm thinking, gosh, I've never had a problem with this. And strangely or divinely, however you would like to look at it, it arrived on April the 22nd, and that is her birthday.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
I love it. Again, it's titled Night Pigeons. It's written by Helen Ivey. Published by Christian Faith Publishing, is available everywhere, so go places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Helen, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight, and really appreciate you being on the show with me.
Thank you so much for your time.
I'm looking at a novel just came out, written by Stephen H. Vogler. It's titled Goodbye World, and we're going to talk all about this right now. Stephen is here with me at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Stephen, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you joining me here tonight.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Stephen, can you tell me all about Goodbye World? What readers can expect here?
Well, it's a little hard to explain. Really, it's a series of entries from a young girl's journal. And what makes it interesting is the girl, named Sarah Ann, by the way, she's wheelchair bound and suffering from learning disabilities. So her life has been spent indoors and alone, except on Thursdays. And that's when her tutor comes to teach her and teaches reading and writing. And in fact, the story actually begins one Thursday when her tutor brings her a secondhand typewriter and shows her how to type hello to the world for the first time. And little do they know that before the year is over, she'll be saying goodbye for the very last time.
Stephen, what kinds of readers did you have in mind for this?
Well, I think this is a story about communication. And I think it's intended for people that are concerned with the health of individuals, the mental health, the parents of children who may have difficulty learning and so forth. And it sounds like it's kind of a negative ending, but it's really very positive because this girl, Sarah Ann, has great hopes and dreams, and she gets them across even before she says goodbye for the last time. So you know that it's not over for her. She's going to make a life of her own, get into the world somehow, and accomplish what she dreams of.
Stephen, how did this book come about? How were you inspired to write this?
Well, you know, I was a teacher for 40 years, and I had a student many years ago that was exactly this same situation. He was wheelchair bound, and they were trying to integrate him into the classroom. So he would be wheeled into my classroom every day. And the difficulty was the poor kid had no communication skills. He couldn't talk very clearly. People had trouble understanding, and he had trouble following my arguments and discussions and so on and so forth. So they took him out of the building, and I would go to his house, and he would come to my house sometimes for training, but it was not very successful. And I've often thought about that kid, and this is a story that kind of came out of that experience for me.
Have you ever done anything like this before, Stephen? Or are you published before?
I have one book published at Amazon. It's called How to Write a Damn Good Essay. And it's intended for high school students and so forth, how to increase their grades that they get from D's and F's to A's and B's.
So this is your first novel. Did this one take you a long time to write and get published?
Well, you know, I don't know if you know it, but this is a very short book. It was based on a short story, and I sent it in just per chance. Somebody had read the short story, and they said, you know, this has a lot of meaning to people who are health experts and so forth. So why don't you call it in and see if anybody would publish it? And sure enough, they did. And it took me a year to write. Because I even had to learn how to type it better. If you read the book, you'll see why that as you go through the book, it gets harder and harder to read because of the typing that goes on. And it's all justified in the story and so forth. But it just took me that much time to hone the story down and to make it as meaningful as I think the reader will find it.
Well, I love this message. I know a lot of readers are going to love it too. The book, again, is titled Goodbye World. It's written by Stephen H. Vogler and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So get it everywhere, places like Amazon, iTunes, Barnes & Noble, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Stephen, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight and learning all about Goodbye World and the story behind that. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I wish the best of luck to all of your listeners.
The new novel by author Shakira Kim is set in a post-apocalyptic world. It's titled The Unraveled World, and we're going to be talking all about this. Shakira is here with me. Shakira, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I appreciate you being here.
Hi, thank you so much for the interview. I'm really excited to do this.
Well, I'm excited to be talking with you and to be finding out all about the unraveled world. So, Shakira, can you tell me what readers are in store for here?
Sure. So it's mostly, it's just mainly first, it's an adult science fiction book that delves into the thriller option portion of it. And basically what happens is, there is a man-made virus that gets out into the world because of like a military mess up. And there's an antigenic shift with the flu virus that forces a certain human forward on the evolutionary scale, kind of like what would the next step be as to what we look like. And it makes us Homo sapiens not so much the dominant species anymore. We follow a group of these, well, first and foremost, the original scientists, and then he meets up with other people, like-minded people, to see if are they going to live together or can they find a way to regain their status as the dominant species.
So how did you get the idea for this? It sounds like a great story.
So all of my stories are actually dreams. I'm a lucid dreamer. So I have a bunch of dream journals, and some of them make it to the pages and some don't. Most don't, actually.
As far as publishing goes, is this your first time publishing or have you been published before this?
I am a self-published indie author, so this would be my fifth book that's published, but my first time through a publisher.
Was this a long process once you got started on it?
Yeah, so with research, and I'm an outliner, so I like to do outlines. It took about 18 months, almost 2 years to get this book done and ready for submission.
And when you got to that publishing process with the publisher, Newman Springs, what did you find the most challenging part about that?
I think the most challenging part was actually the waiting. So when you publish yourself, when you're an indie publisher, it's so much faster than waiting for someone else to give you the green light or give you feedback for you to say yay or nay to something. So I think for me, it was the waiting part of it.
What's it like when you actually hold that book for the first time and you're looking at it? It must be crazy.
It's actually pretty emotional. It's actually every single book that I've ever held that's been published it always has an emotional impact on me. But for this one, it was huge. I'm not necessarily a crier, but this one definitely brought tears to my eyes.
So you got 5 books out there. Sounds like you're going to be publishing more. So when you think about that, you're a published author. What's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
The most rewarding aspect of getting my work out there is more so than anything else, confronting my shyness about my written work. As a writer, I'm very shy. I've written my entire life, but I didn't actually have the courage to publish anything until my 40s.
So looking down the road, like I said, I expect you'd probably be writing more because you love to write.
Yeah, so I have a kind of in-between novella for The Unraveled World. There follows 2 specific characters, and we kind of see what brought them to the point where we meet them at The Unraveled World. And there is a part 2 to The Unraveled World that's still in its outline and research phases, but it's going to get there.
You said you're an outliner. Now, when you sit down to write and you're going through your story, do you ever find it kind of breaking out of your outline and maybe taking a little life of its own?
Oh, absolutely. These characters never go the way I want them to go, ever.
Do you try to steer it back on course, or do you just kind of follow where they're leading?
I generally just go where they want me to go, and then if I have to, I can clean it up later on.
Well, this sounds like a great book. I think readers are going to love this. Again, it's titled The Unraveled World. It's written by Shakira Kim, published by Newman Springs Publishing. It's available pretty much everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and right down the street at your local bookshop, too. Well, Shakira, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
In her new book, Color Your Energy, a self-empowerment guide through nature and the chakras, author Violet Rose invites readers on a vibrant and reflective journey. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now. Violet is sitting right here with me. Violet, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to be talking with you, and I'm interested to learn all about Color Your Energy. Violet, can you tell me all about it?
Sure. So this book is a tool for self-empowerment through self-exploration. It has different concepts and elements weaved in, like the chakras, color, nature, the ethereal, spirituality. Each page has an original painting or nature photograph that I've taken, coupled with an excerpt, a journal prompt, and an affirmation. So these excerpts explore all different topic areas about life, death, grief, loss, life's challenges and transitions, and help the reader cope and process through these experiences. The journal prompts help the reader delve deeper into these concepts as well. And lastly, the affirmations are really there to help empower you in your life now and with where you're going next. They really highlight your resiliency through challenges and celebrate your uniqueness throughout this experience.
So when you were writing this, Violet, did you have any specific readers in mind for it?
So the book is really for everyone. It's all inclusive. However, it is very supportive for women to cope and process through grief, loss, transitions like divorce, family challenges, so they can feel empowered, find joy and meaning in their life. I know what it's like to experience these things because I went through them myself.
What does your writing background look like? Have you done this kind of thing before, Violet?
This is my first book that I published, but I love to write. I love to journal. It's a favorite thing of mine to do.
Oh, congratulations. So what was that spark? What made you say, hey, I want to sit down and get started on this book?
You know, this was a lengthy and long process and journey to actually publish this book. It took 5 years in the making. Yeah, so in 2019, I was going through a bit of a transformation in my life. It was first with my career. I'd been working in healthcare for over 10 years, and at this time I was branching out into teaching yoga. So I was doing my 200-hour yoga teacher training. And in this career growth was also leading me to a personal and spiritual growth. At this time, my father became sick and he was actively dying. He subsequently passes away a few months later. And I was also experiencing family challenges. And on top of all of this, I was soon to be divorced. So it was a lot going on at this time. It was a really expansive time for me personally and professionally. So throughout this time, my spirituality, writing, and color really helped me cope and process all of these different emotions I was feeling, and it helped me heal. So I had these separate pieces, paintings, photographs, journal excerpts, and affirmations that I had done, but they kind of just sat. They sat in a bag, and they were in notebooks. And it wasn't until 2023 that after I came home from a yoga retreat that I started feeling intuitively guided about fusing all of these pieces of the puzzle together, the paintings, the photographs, the journal prompts, the affirmations. And so I started putting these ideas together. They actually started out as an oracle deck. So for those who are unsure what an oracle deck is, it's a tool that can be used for empowerment and guidance. So I started making these cards by hand myself with my printer, with the paintings and the nature photos on one side and the condensed journal prompts and affirmations on the other side. And then when I submitted my idea to the publisher, they really liked it, but they didn't publish oracle cards at the time. So I decided to turn this into a book, the Self-Empowerment Guide.
And now that you are published, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
I really think it's knowing that my ideas are out there in the world to help others cope and process through things that they're going through similarly, especially other women, and knowing that this can really help empower them in their own lives. That's really, really rewarding.
I think so many are going to benefit from this. Again, it's titled Color Your Energy, a self-empowerment guide through nature and the chakras. This is written by Violet Rose and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So it's available pretty much everywhere, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Violet, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
When Three Hearts Align, revealing the mystical union of marriage. It's the new book. It just came out, written by Dwayne New and Terry New. and it's a guide to building lasting relationships. We're going to be talking all about it. Dwayne and Terry are here with me now. Dwayne, Terry, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The pleasure is all mine, and I can't wait to find out about When Three Hearts Align. So can you tell me what readers can expect to find here?
Well, readers can expect to find a wonderful read here where we talk about the divine institution of marriage, which was perfectly created by God, whereby two imperfect people enter this institution, often ill-equipped and not having the blueprint to follow. It provides invaluable, insightful insights, that is, utilizing godly principles, questions, and relatable stories that will empower couples to fight for their marriage.
So when it comes to the sorts of readers that you had in mind while you were working on this, who would that be?
Well, our target audience is for single people who are hopeful. They're single and hopeful. It's for married couples who have been married for any period of time, really, and also for divorced people who desire to marry again. I'm not quite sure how to get started or what to do.
So how did this come about? How were you inspired to start this book?
Well, we were inspired to write this book because of the pandemic. As we had heard, many couples were choosing to walk away from their marriage after being in isolation with one another for so long. And that inspired us actually to write this book.
During that time.
Yeah.
We're all in isolation.
So once you got started on it, was this a long process to get it written and put through that publishing process?
Oh, yeah. It was about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Took some time, for sure.
Wow. So once you wrote it, you got your manuscript all set, you sent that off to Christian Faith, and that publishing process began. What did you find the trickiest or most challenging part of that publishing end of things?
Ooh, I think it was the editing process.
Yeah, I agree.
The editing process was tricky. It was a little bit of a challenge, because they had a very tight process, but it was very good. It's a very thorough way that they did it so that they could always be on point with the changes that you wanted and need, where to make them. It was very good, but it was time-consuming, and we didn't expect that. But because it was very thoroughly done.
Terry, Dwayne, are you new to this whole writing and publishing thing, or do you have experience in it?
This is our first.
Yeah, this is our first book.
So now, if you think about it, you're published authors. So what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Most rewarding, I would say, legacy.
Yeah, the opportunity to leave a deposit in the lives of others and then leave a legacy for generations to come.
So when you take on a project like this, it's a big project, and it's helpful if maybe you have some people around you and they can encourage you and keep you kind of going as you're doing all this. Do you have people like that in your life?
Interesting enough, we kept it quiet. We kept it quiet, and we just worked on it. We spent lots of time. It was a very good quality time for us because we spent so much time talking about all of the details and the insights. And it really was a blessing for our marriage as we sat and we talked through all of the elements of this book. So it was very rewarding for us, and we do believe it'll be very rewarding for others.
And when it came to the actual writing of this, was it a smooth process for you, or were there times when you hit hurdles, maybe some writer's block set in, or maybe you just didn't know where to go next? How did you get through those challenges?
One thing we did not want to do is rush through this process of writing this book. We wanted to take our time and allow God to speak to our hearts along the way. And there were times when we had writer's block and we had to step away from it for a while. But whenever, we receive something, we start to write. And it allowed us to communicate with one another regarding different aspects of the book.
Oh, what a beautiful book. What an important book. I think so many readers are going to be blessed. Again, the title of this is When Three Hearts Align, Revealing the Mystical Union of Marriage. It's written by Dwayne New and Terry New, published by Christian Faith Publishing. So really, it's available anywhere. Get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Now, Terry, Dwayne, it was really a delight talking with you tonight and learning about this book. Thank you again for talking with me.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you, Corey. Thank you for having us.
The new book just came out by Veronica Grace. It's titled Prayers of the Damned. and it's a series of poems that serve as a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. We're going to be talking all about it. Veronica is right here with me now. Veronica, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Corey. It's a pleasure.
I can't wait to find out all about Prayers of the Damned and what readers are going to find here, Veronica. Can you tell me about it?
Sure. So, like you said, it is a collection of poems that are broken into different sections covering different themes, one being staying positive. So I know there's a lot of pressure in the current culture to mask and look positive even when you're struggling with those dark internal thoughts. As the poems go on, they get more in depth into that internal struggle. So part 2 is titled Fake Smile, and those poems center around, what happens when the pressure of wearing that mask gets to be too much. And then those go into Prayers of the Damned, part 3, which really captures that battle with the inner demon voices that, people experience. How do we overcome that? And then parts 4 and 5 go more into hope, centering around Christian themes like Calvary. So comparing that inner darkness and battle to Christ's walk towards Calvary. And then part 5 being salvation, how we can find hope even in this darkness.
Veronica, what kinds of readers were you writing for here?
For this book in particular, I was hoping to reach those who struggle with mental illness or social and emotional disturbances, especially those who might feel pressured, especially in Christian circles, to find almost immediate healing. So I spent a lot of time around people, especially youth, who struggle with social and emotional disturbances, and it always breaks my heart when some of them come from Christian families where the pressure is, if you just did the right thing, if you just asked God for forgiveness, this wouldn't be happening, and that's not always the case. Healing isn't always immediate, especially for those with mental illnesses. So I was hoping that this book could reach them and that they could see they're not alone. A lot of people struggle with this darkness, and there is hope through healing, and it might take time, but it's there. Salvation is there.
What a great message. Veronica, what does your writing background look like? Are you experienced in this kind of thing?
I dabbled in creative writing throughout my school years. I just recently got my master's in creative writing from Southern New Hampshire University, but this is one of my first published books. I have 2 others that are in the works of being finalized that also kind of center around Christian themes and ideas.
So was this a long process for you, writing everything and then putting it through that publishing process?
It was. I would say a lot of it took time, a lot of drafting, a lot of thought process behind the poems. I would like to say that it also came over experience. So I always wanted to kind of capture my own personal struggles in words and, share that with people so they don't feel alone. But it didn't get finalized until I started really working hands-on with youth with social and emotional disturbances and hearing their stories and their pain and their struggles and wanting to really capture that voice and put it together with that message of salvation being there, that healing is possible.
What happens to so many of us authors, and that's when the writing gets challenging and the words aren't coming out, maybe you've got writer's block. Veronica, did you have to deal with those challenges?
Yes. I did have to deal with writer's block during the process of writing Prayers of the Damned. When I met those writing blocks, a lot of times going out for a walk, clearing my mind helped. Reflecting on the stories I've heard, the voices of those suffering also helped in that process when I hit those blocks.
Well, what an important book this is. Again, the title is Prayers of the Damned. It's written by Veronica Grace and is published by Hawes & Jenkins Publishing. So you can find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores, really anywhere. Well, Veronica, it's been so nice talking with you tonight and learning about Prayers of the Damned. Thanks again for chatting with me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.